The desert was not meant for snow, yet that night it fell like ash from a dying sky. Elias Boone pulled his coat tighter, his breath fogging in the cold. Then he saw it, a hand, pale against the drift near his well. For a moment he thought it was a ghost, then the fingers twitched. He dropped to his knees, shoveling the snow away until a woman's face appeared, dark hair frozen to her cheeks, lips blue, eyes barely open. She whispered something he couldn't understand, then went still. Elias lifted her into his arms, heart pounding, and carried her toward the cabin. Behind him, the wind erased her tracks. Ahead, the storm swallowed the world whole. By lantern light, Elias cut through layers of wet buckskin and saw blood soak deep into her shoulder. He cleaned the wound with trembling hands, muttering prayers he hadn't spoken in years. The woman gasped awake, wild, terrified, knife flashing from her boot. "Easy," he said. "You're safe here." She spoke in Apache, words sharp as arrows. He didn't understand, but the message was clear. "Don't touch me." He stepped back, palms open. She eyed him like a cornered hawk, breathing hard. When exhaustion finally overtook her, she collapsed again. Elias sat beside the fire, watching her sleep, wondering what devil or mercy had brought her to his doorstep. Outside, the wind screamed against the shutters, a sound that felt like judgment. Morning came slow and silent. She woke to the crackle of fire and the smell of bread. When her eyes found his jacket hanging by the wall, her breath caught. The faded blue emblem of a Union scout burned into the cloth. Her hand went to the knife again. "You, soldier?" she asked, her English broken but fierce. "Not anymore. Not for a long time." Her gaze hardened. She turned away, whispering something that sounded like a curse. Elias swallowed the guilt that rose like bile. He'd seen what men like him had done. Fires in the night, villages turned to smoke. He removed the jacket and threw it into the flames. "I don't wear ghosts," he said quietly. For the first time, she didn't look afraid, just tired. Days passed with few words. He cooked, she watched. When she tried to rise, her wound tore open, and he caught her before she fell. Her pride burned brighter than her fever. That night, they ate in silence. He broke a piece of bread, handed it to her. She hesitated, then took it. The firelight drew soft gold across her face, strong, scarred, beautiful. She pointed to herself. "Aiyana," she said. "Elias," he answered. They shared no smile, but something small shifted in the air, a fragile thread of trust. Later, she whispered a prayer over the fire, words in her tongue that soothed the room. Elias didn't know their meaning, but somehow the wind outside sounded less like judgment and more like forgiveness.
Aiyana dreamed aloud while half asleep, words tumbling between pain and memory. "My people gone," she murmured. "My father say, dying hawks still fly to sun." Elias sat beside her listening. He remembered his own father's words before the war. A man's worth is the mercy he can still offer. When she woke, she found him mending her torn sleeve with clumsy stitches. "You fix woman's clothes?" she asked, teasing despite herself. He smiled faintly. "I fix what's broken." Aiyana touched the sleeve, then looked out the window. The storm had passed, leaving the desert clean and cold beneath the morning light. For the first time since she arrived, she whispered softly, "Thank you." Elias nodded, a quiet promise forming in his chest he didn't yet understand. The peace shattered 2 mornings later. Boot prints, fresh, ran along the fence line. Elias found them at dawn, too neat to be travelers. He followed them to the ridge and saw distant riders, blue coats glinting in the sun. Aiyana stood behind him, pale. She look for me. If they find, they kill you too. Elias's jaw tightened. You're not going anywhere. She shook her head. No man die for me. He looked at her then, really looked, and saw not a fugitive, but someone who had already lost everything worth hiding. Then I'll make sure they never find you. Aiyana's eyes filled with something like sorrow or respect. Below them, the cavalry spread out like wolves on a scent. He hadn't touched a rifle in years. Now he checked the sights, loaded the chamber, and set extra cartridges on the table. Aiyana watched from the doorway. You fight again, she said quietly. I fight to stop fighting. When the riders reached the lower meadow, Elias saddled his horse and turned toward her. Hide in the cellar. Don't come out until you hear me call. She caught his arm. They have no mercy. Neither does this land, but it remembers those who show it. Then he rode down into the wind, coat whipping behind him like a banner of ghosts. For a heartbeat, Aiyana thought she saw his shadow stretch across the desert like the wings of her father's hawk, battered, but still flying toward the sun. Gunfire cracked through the valley. Elias fired from cover, picking his targets carefully. The soldiers spread out, answering with thunder. Aiyana heard the shots, her heart slamming. She ignored his order and ran outside, keeping low. Smoke rose from the ridge, then silence. When she reached him, he was on the ground, blood soaking his sleeve. You're hit, she gasped. Just a graze, he lied, teeth clenched. She dragged him behind a boulder, tearing strips from her dress to bind the wound. Bullets struck stone around them, each impact echoing like a drumbeat of doom. He looked at her, the woman he once would have feared, and saw courage carved from grief. Go, he said. She shook her head. We go. And together they vanished into the storm of dust.
They rode through night and fire, the desert swallowing their tracks. Elias leaned against Aiyana's shoulder, half-conscious, while she steered the horse through canyons painted silver by moonlight. Coyotes cried in the distance. Wind carried whispers through the rocks, voices of the lost. When dawn broke, they reached an old Spanish mission, long abandoned. Crumbling walls, a cracked bell, silence heavy as prayer. Aiyana laid him down on the altar, pressing a hand to his chest. His breathing was shallow. Don't die, Elias Boone. You still owe the sun another morning. Outside, the wind shifted, carrying the faintest echo of the bell. One single broken chime, like the desert itself was holding its breath for him. For 3 days, he drifted between fever and memory. Aiyana tended him with herbs and whispered songs. When he woke, weak but alive, she sat beside him, eyes shining with quiet defiance. You saved me, he said. She smiled faintly. Now you know my name means eternal bloom. He chuckled, then coughed. Figures, you're the first thing to grow here in years. Outside, sand hissed against the walls like the sea. They both knew the army would not stop searching, yet neither spoke of leaving.
Instead, Aiyana handed him his rifle, now empty. "No more killing," she said. Elias nodded. "No more." For the first time, peace felt possible, fragile as a candle flame, but real. Weeks passed. The cabin they rebuilt stood like a scar on the land, stubborn, weathered, alive. Elias mended fences, Aiyana planted seeds she carried in a pouch. Their words grew easier, their silences softer. One night, under starlight, she traced the old burn mark on his chest. "This," she said, "was where you carried your flag?" He nodded. She placed her hand over it. "Now you carry this." He didn't ask what she meant. He already knew. From the hills the sound of drums faded into the wind, the world moving on without them. Together they stood at the door, watching dawn creep across the desert. For once the horizon didn't look endless. It looked like home.